from the News Channel 5 network. This is Urban Outlook.
Hello and welcome to Urban Outlook. I'm April Eaton. Thank you so much for being with us today. So how do you take the scrapbook of somebody's life, the old photos and mementos, the awards, the newspaper articles, the clipped and saved things that were there for safekeeping, and turn it into a story that reaches beyond that person, maybe even beyond that family? Well, Dr. Harriet Hamilton knows just how to do that. She did that very thing. She took a scrapbook and books that belonged to her father that she didn't even know about and turned it into something very beautiful, something that people can read today called Daddy's Scrapbook. Harriet Kimbro, the Negro Baseball League, a daughter's perspective. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Hamilton. I appreciate you being here today. So maybe we'll start at when this all started for you, and that was 1999, after the passing of your dad.
Yes.
Your mom gave you a mission. What was that?
Well, first she handed me a scrapbook that was very, very old, and at that point it was about 60 years old, and the edges were flaking, and it was just very old. And I thought, well, what is this? And she said, well, this is your dad's scrapbook. And when I looked in it, it had baseball pictures, Satchel Paige, Roy Campanella, all of his stats when he played professional baseball with the Negro Leagues, and just so many more. And I thought, well, what am I to do with this? And she said, you know what to do with this. So that was her mission to me, was to do something with this scrapbook. And at the time, I didn't know what she had in mind. And it took me a while to understand, well, what are we talking about?
And you didn't even really know your dad's story, full story at that time either, did you?
I was in high school when a friend of his, a fellow Negro leaguer, Butch McCord, came up to me and said, hello, how are you doing? And I said, hi, how are you? And he said, did you know your dad was a heck of a baseball player? And I thought, who are you talking about? and I looked at my dad, who was, you know, he was working at the filling station and had Bill's Cab Company at the time. We were on the corner of, we were at Charlotte, I believe, or maybe we had moved to Joe Johnson. But anyway, I was there just hanging out, and I thought, who is this person? And so it just intrigued me. And I went to my father and I said, Butch said that you were a baseball player, a professional baseball player. And he said, yeah, I played a little bit. Just totally downplayed it, no pomp and circumstances, any of that. And I thought, well, he's truly being, you know, just very, very humble. And so I went to looking at information, going to the library, getting a couple of books that talked about the Negro League and how real it was. And so then I discovered
that he really was somebody.
Yeah, well, he was already somebody to me.
Of course he was. He was
daddy.
Your dad. That's right.
He was daddy, but now he became like Clark Kent. You know, someone with a secret identity that I've discovered.
We've got some pictures of him there in his uniform. He played for the Baltimore Elite Giants,
They
correct?
call it Elites.
Elite, okay. The Baltimore Elite Giants back in the day. When you kind of discovered this dad beyond the dad, what went through your mind?
Who is this person? And I became very, very proud that he was in that time, in that era, because I considered all those guys heroes. They kept the flame burning.
Absolutely.
For the Jackie Robinsons and all the players that came after. All the players that came after Jackie Robinson, they kept it going. They kept the dream alive that, you know, baseball was real and it was in the black community and we had talent. And we had a lot of talent. So when the color line broke, all of a sudden the floodgates, and they were there. And so I was very proud of those guys like Jim Zapp. They are all just heroes to me.
You have, because of this work that you've been doing through the years, you've developed a lot of relationships with members of the Negro League. Talk a little bit about how that's all unfolded for you.
Well, when Butch told me that Dad was a baseball player, Dad told me that Butch was a baseball player, and I began to see several people. There were about 13 or 14 of them that lived in Nashville. And unfortunately, all of them are gone from Nashville now. But even Ed Martin, who used to be the coach at Tennessee State University, he played in the Negro League.
I did not know that.
And I did not know that either.
Wow.
And there were several of them that were there. So I began to contact them when I got serious about my book. And I went to their homes, and they just opened up their memories to me. And I thought maybe they might have trouble remembering. But as soon as they began to talk about the Negro League, their eyes lit up, and they just came with the information just so fluently, I was surprised.
Is that when you've kind of figured out what your mom's message meant, that
Yes.
you would know what to do as you
Yes.
started hearing these stories and learning more about your own father
Yes.
and his impact
Yes.
in Negro League baseball? Is that how it sort of came to light for you?
It did. I began to pull the stories together, and there were some funny stories.
Tell us one.
About my dad. Well, one was, well, you know, he owned Bill's Cabs.
Yes.
So he had a reputation for being a great mechanic and also a great bus driver. So he was the backup bus driver for whoever was the real bus driver as the team went throughout the country. And so one time they were driving and the brakes went out. And so the driver, everybody was sleeping, and the driver said, "Hey, wake up Kimbro." And so he came and took the reins of the bus, and he knew what to do, which I don't know what he did. I can't even explain it.
In order to stop one time? Because when brakes go out, that's pretty dangerous.
So he knew where to go and you know, where to run into.
Oh, wow.
And I think they ran into a barn
to get the bus stopped.
to get the bus to stop. And everybody was fine. Of course, the front of it was all tore up, but you know, everybody was fine. And so they trusted him to, you know, get them to a safe place.
Yep.
Might be, you know, battered a little bit, but they were always safe. So he had a lot of confidence in knowing what to do with the bus, how to stop the bus, where to go, and he didn't panic. He was a person that never panicked. You just always say he was a cool, calm person, always. So.
The book is beautiful, but I'm so intrigued about how it all started with this tattered scrapbook. Talk about some of the things that you found as you turned the pages through the original scrapbook before it became the ultimate daddy scrapbook book.
Well, on the first page there is a picture of Roy Campanella, which everybody knows is in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and it is written to Dad, and it said, "I'm not there to help you win the championship, but I wish you luck." And by that time, he had left the Negro Leagues and went to play in Mexico.
Okay.
Because they just made a lot of money in Mexico and Cuba, anywhere they went during the winters to play.
And he was more accepted, I bet, as well on the teams there.
People didn't give them a second thought. They saw them as like superstars. Like we see our superstars now, that's the way
They were the stars.
The Caribbean people saw the baseball players, because they all had talent. And so I just started reading and turning the pages, and the stat was what got my attention.
Okay.
You know, 400 is the top number in baseball, and my father, for most of his career, was batting 300 plus. And I thought, well, wait a minute, he's pretty good.
More than pretty good,
Yeah,
actually,
he's not the
Dr.
average.
Hamilton.
Yeah, he's not the average Joe Blow here.
Right.
300, that's quite an accomplishment.
Absolutely.
So the first thought was he deserved to be nominated for the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame here in the state of Tennessee.
And that took a feat as well. Talk a little bit about how that all came about.
Well, I began to put a baseball resume together for my dad, and year by year, his stats, and all the things that he had done. At one time in the Negro League, he was the fastest person, I think topping Cool Papa Bell, which is saying a whole lot, because Cool Papa Bell was so fast, they said he could jump in bed and turn the lights out at the same time. you know, they kind of they kind of had that type of saying about people with talent. But you know, you're thinking about you can turn off the light and be in bed at the same time.
Boom, boom, boom. That's right.
So he did that. He had all of that stat in terms of his batting average, and you know, he was a center fielder, and that's considered the very
prime
fastest person on the team. And I thought, well, I have enough that I can put a resume together and submit it and get letters of support. And the first time around, you know, we didn't get in, but the second time, you know, the Spirit just kind of led me to say, this is what you really need to do. I contacted people like Buck O'Neill, who was very kind. He wrote a letter of support stating my father deserved to be in there. Ronnie Greer, who was the former councilman here in Nashville. Butch McCord was another one that wrote a letter of support. And Larry Smito, who owned the Sounds some years ago, was a fan of my dad, and I didn't know that.
Wow.
He said, your dad was quite a ball player. Judge Burt wrote a letter of support. So I had some powerful people that supported this nomination, and he got in.
Excellent. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk more about the book. I want to talk more about these beautiful stories that you've unfolded with your dad.
Okay.
And then, of course, we want to let people know how they can get their hands on their own copy of the book as well. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us.